According to the Washington Post, of 2.3 million people in American jails and prisons, more than 65% meet the medical criteria for substance abuse. Hello, my name is Brianna, and drug addicts should be placed in medical facilities instead of being placed in prisons for punishment. Currently in America, people who have drug possessions are often sentenced in prison for long periods of time. Often when someone is caught with a drug possession, they are most likely an addict. These addicts become addicted because they either feel rejected from society, they feel alone, or they had a bad experience which drove them into drug usage and abuse. They use these drugs to help them overcome their fears, along with take away their problems, take away their pain, so they feel like the drugs can subsidize that pain and those problems that they may have. So by placing these poor addicts into prisons, they're not getting the proper help they need in order to overcome this addiction and this fear, when in reality they just want the help. It is a disorder. Drug addicts should be placed in medical facilities by implementing a similar policy to that of Portugal, because once prisoners that are addicts are released, they often relapse, and they do not receive the help they need like we think they do while in prison. According to the National Association of Drug Court Professionals, approximately 90% of addicts relapse when released from prisons. This is because they are surrounded by bad influences that influence them that the drug is all they need, or that they are alone and they are being outcast from society. They are being outcast from society because society pins them as criminals, when in reality they have a disorder. And while this disorder may result in a criminal act, the disorder needs to be treated as a disorder instead of a criminal act. Also, the reason that they relapse while in prison is relapse after release from prison is because prison creates fear, and this fear can drive the addict further into their addiction. Also, drugs are sometimes smuggled into prisons. How are they smuggled into prisons? Well, some correctional officers smuggle these drugs into prisons because they feel as though they need to earn more money and need to get more money to earn a security blanket for themselves. Also, visitors can often smuggle drugs in for the addict, either because they are a drug dealer just trying to get some money, or they feel like they're trying to help the addict, when in reality they are hurting the addict. Therefore, all these things, whether they relapse while in prison or they relapse after, this fear, this aloneness feeling often can drive them into addiction and relapse as soon as they get out of prison. According to the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse at Columbia University, it was found that only 11% of inmates with substance abuse disorders receive treatment at federal and state prisons. This shows that no treatment plans are being set in place for these prisoners that have a substance abuse or a substance disorder. Like I stated before, this should be treated as a disorder and not as a criminal act. Therefore, they need the help to make sure that they don't feel alone, and the help so that they don't have to rely on those drugs to take away their pain and their problems. Also, they need the medical help to make sure they're healthy and that they're not taking drugs and that they're basically overcoming their addiction. Also, prison cannot help them integrate with society a lot better and feel like they fit into society. Whereas if we implemented medical facilities and centers, those could help those people who overcome addiction integrate into society and realize that they are not alone and that they don't need to use drugs as a security blanket to cover themselves and protect themselves and to relieve their problems and their fears. In 2001, Portugal abolished all criminal penalties for drug possession. Instead, if someone is caught with drug possession in Portugal, they are set with a panel of a psychologist, a social worker, and a legal advisor. These three people initially help this person overcome their addiction and help them to better integrate with themselves within society to relate to others as well. By implementing this policy, it also not only helped the drug addict, it also helped the government, because it was found that incarceration is actually more expensive than helping the drug addict. So why not just help the drug addict and save a little money while we're at it? The Cato Institute published a paper 5 years later that the drug rate had decreased in Portugal. Also, teen drug usage and HIV infections dramatically decreased in Portugal. Also, Policy Mike published an article on the continuation of drug use among ages 15 to 64, and it decreased to where it was under 30%. Also, drug users were more likely to seek out treatment, which that rate nearly doubled, which means if we provide the help that the addicts need, they will come to the proper place to get the help they need to overcome their addiction. In conclusion, drug addicts should be placed in medical facilities instead of being placed in prisons for punishment by implementing a similar policy to that of Portugal, because currently drug addicts often relapse when released from prisons, and also they are not getting the help that they need to better integrate themselves into society as well as to overcome their drug addiction. By implementing a similar policy to Portugal, instead of criminalizing the behavior of drug possession, we should place them in medical care so that they can get better to overcome their addiction. This will decrease the rate of relapse as well as drug usage for our country and will help the addict to overcome their fears and make sure that they do not go to drugs as a problem solver or a pain reliever. According to National Institute on Drug Abuse, scientific research shows that treatment can help many drug users change behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs, avoid drug abuse, and remove themselves from a life of substance abuse and crime. Thank you.